Hello everyone, my name is Jinjos and welcome to my playthrough of Bageltop's Marvel Legendary campaign. Today we're going to be concluding Chapter 4 in the campaign, Paint the Town Red. We will be picking up right where we left off with our victory over Mysterio. Let's jump right in. Mission 15, Carnage. Mysterio yells out, "Normally, I prefer to use illusions, but to truly finish you all off, I have arranged something more real." Mysterio gestures at Carnage. "I ordered Sinister to cook up something using Spider-Man's blood. Unlike my illusionary Carnage you already fought, this one is quite deadly." Looking over at Sinister, Mysterio demands, "Sinister, send your dog against these half-wits." Sinister and Carnage remain in place. Mysterio stomps his foot. "Sinister, I gave you an order." Mr. Sinister begins to laugh, slowly at first, building to a more maniacal laugh. "Quentin Beck, you think yourself to be in charge, but all you have to wield are merely smoke and mirrors. I work in a much more tangible medium." Mysterio begins to look more frightened. What are you doing?" Sinister continues. "Once I obtained Spider-Man's blood and the symbiote sample, I began constructing my ultimate weapon, but that is not all." You see black veins of energy begin to pulse within Carnage. "After the recent demonic invasion in Hell's Kitchen, I learned of the power of the Dark Dimension. I then began experimenting. Eventually, I was able to grant Carnage the power to draw energy and even create portals from that dimension. Wisps of black energy begin to emit from the pores within the Carnage's form. Sinister laughs even harder. "And to think you were ever in charge, Beck. You play in mere trickery, yet I wield true power, which I shall now demonstrate." With but a gesture from Mr. Sinister, Carnage leaps on top of Mysterio and begins to tear him limb from limb. Once Carnage completes his grisly dispute, he turns towards you. "And now, deal with my other problem." Carnage leaps towards you as Sinister, hands behind his back, walks calmly into the shadows. Moving into setup, we will be taking on the Portals to the Dark Dimension scheme. We will include 7 scheme twists, and when the first one is drawn, it will increase the Mastermind's HP by 1. Twists 2 to 6 will be placed in a city space, which will grant the villains in that space plus 1 HP. If the 7th one is drawn, evil will win. We will be taking on Carnage, who has 9 HP, and when we draw Master Strike, we will feast the top card of each player's deck, meaning we will KO it. If a 0-cost hero is KO'd, we will gain a wound. Our starting HQ will consist of Stack the Deck, which will draw us 2 cards and have us place a card back on top of our deck. Great Responsibility, which grants 1 attack, and we reveal the top card of our deck. If it costs 2 or less, we draw it. Astonishing Strength, which is the same as Responsibility, but grants us 1 recruit. Draw Their Fire, which will grant us 3 attack, but we will gain a wound. And Casual Bank Robbery, which grants 2 recruit, plus an additional 1 that can only be used on the hero under the bank. It also has Wall Crawl, which means when it is recruited, it's placed on top of our deck. Miles wins the spiciest Dorito competition and starts us off. Miles draws the dream hand of 6 agents and then a Sentinel from the villain deck, which will cause us to KO a hero when we fight it. He plays out and stares greedily at all of his choices. He zeroes in on the top deck manipulation strategy and recruits Stack the Deck, Responsibility, and Strength. They are replaced by Russian Heavy Tank, which grants 6 attack, and if another player would gain a wound, you could reveal this card to gain it instead and draw a card. Pickpocket, which has Wall Crawl, and will reveal the top card of a player's deck and grant attack equal to that card's recruit and attack value, and another Draw Their Fire. He passes. Harrison draws 3 agents, 3 troopers, and then another Sentinel from the villain deck. He plays out. Wanting to keep pace with Miles, he recruits Pickpocket, and both copies of Draw Their Fire, hoping to use Pickpocket to take advantage of Draw Their Fire without gaining the wounds. They're replaced by Responsibility, High Stakes Jackpot, which grants 4 attack and will reveal the top card of our deck, gaining attack equal to that card's cost, and Pickpocket. He then takes out a Sentinel and KOs an agent. He passes. Miles draws 2 agents, 4 troopers, and then a bystander from the villain deck, which the Sentinel will capture. He plays out, and with such low-costing heroes in the HQ, he keeps focusing on Spider-Man cards and scoops up Responsibility. It's replaced by Leap from Above, which grants 3 attack, has Wall Crawl, and when activated by an Instinct hero, will grant 2 more attack. He takes out the Sentinel, rescuing a bystander, and KOing an agent. He passes. Harrison draws 4 agents, a trooper, Pickpocket, and then a Master Strike from the villain deck. Carnage feasts on 2 agents, and each player gains a wound. He plays Pickpocket, targeting himself, and revealing an agent. He plays out, and with the HQ having 3 larger costing cards, recruits Casual Bank Robbery, replacing it with Card Shark. He passes. Miles draws 3 agents, 3 troopers, and then a Green Goblin from the villain deck, which will capture a bystander when it enters. He plays out, and takes what he can by recruiting Pickpocket, replacing it with Astonishing Strength, which he recruits as well, replacing it with Jinx, which grants 3 attack, and when played will reveal the top card of each player's deck, and we can discard them if we want to. He passes. Harrison draws 2 agents, 3 troopers, Pickpocket, and then a Doppelganger from the villain deck, who has the Feast ability, and has HP equal to the cost of the hero below it. He plays Pickpocket, revealing Draw Their Fire from his deck, granting 3 attack. He plays out, and decides to take out Green Goblin over Doppelganger. He passes. Miles draws 2 agents, a trooper, 2 responsibility, Pickpocket, and then a Sentinel from the villain deck. He plays both responsibilities, revealing and drawing an agent, and a strength. He plays strength, drawing Stack the Deck, which he plays. He draws a trooper and a wound, placing the wound back on top. He plays Pickpocket, targeting Harrison's deck, revealing an agent. He plays out, and decides to take out Doppelganger before it gets out of hand, and feasting on the wound he placed on top of the deck. With not enough X-Men heroes to reliably draw from Card Shark, and not wanting to mess up his 2 cost or less flow, he decides to pass. Harrison draws 3 agents, 2 Draw Their Fires, Casual Bank Robbery, and then a Master Strike from the villain deck, which feasts on 2 agents. Each player gains a wound. He plays out all of his recruit cards, and decides to nab up Jinx for a strong attack card, replacing it with another copy of Jinx. With not being able to hit Carnage, and Sentinels not being a threat, he decides to keep his Draw Their Fire in hand. He passes. Miles draws 3 agents, 2 troopers, Astonishing Strength, and then a Demogoblin from the villain deck, which has Feast, and will capture a bystander. He plays Strength, revealing and drawing an agent. He plays out, and being green with envy, recruits Jinx, replacing it with Responsibility. He passes. Harrison draws 3 agents, a trooper, Pickpocket, Draw Their Fire, a wound, and then a Master Strike from the villain deck. Carnage feasts on 2 agents, and each player gains a wound. He plays Pickpocket, revealing an agent from his deck. Looking over his options, and not liking them, he decides to pass, KOing the wound. Miles draws 2 agents, Pickpocket, Responsibility, Strength, Stack the Deck, and then the Lizard from the villain deck, which, if fought in the sewers, will have us gain a wound. He plays Stack the Deck, drawing Responsibility and an agent, placing Pickpocket back on top. He plays out his 3 Spider-Man cards, revealing and drawing Pickpocket, Strength, and a Trooper. He plays Strength, revealing a wound. He plays Pickpocket, targeting Harrison, revealing a Jinx, and granting 3 attack. He plays out and is 1 shy of hitting Carnage. He takes out the Sentinel and Demogoblin, KOing a Trooper from the field, and feasting on the wound we place on top of our deck. He then recruits Responsibility, replacing it with Web Shooter, which will rescue a bystander and do what Spider-Man cards do. He passes. Harrison draws 2 agents, 2 troopers, Draw Their Fire, a wound, and then a Sentinel from the villain deck. With no way to counter the wound from Draw Their Fire, he decides to pass, KOing the wound in his hand. Miles draws 3 agents, a trooper, Jinx, a wound, and then a Master Strike from the villain deck. Carnage feasts on a wound from Harrison's deck, and a trooper from Miles, who will gain a wound. He plays Jinx, revealing a trooper, and Pickpocket, discarding the trooper. He plays out and recruits Web Shooter, replacing it with Perfect Hunter, which has Wall Crawl, will draw a card, and grant 1 attack. He takes out a Sentinel, wanting to thin out his deck, KOing an agent. He passes. Harrison draws 3 agents, a trooper, Casual Bank Robbery, Jinx, and then a Sentinel from the villain deck. He plays out his recruit cards, and recruits Perfect Hunter, replacing it on top of his deck, and replaces it with Stack the Deck. He then plays out again, revealing a trooper and Perfect Hunter, claiming that he thought he was being clever, but he really wasn't. He discards the trooper, and then takes out a Sentinel, KOing a trooper. He passes. Miles draws 1 agent, 3 responsibilities, Strength, Pickpocket, and then a Scheme Twist from the villain deck, raising Carnage's HP to 10. He plays out all of his Spider-Man cards, revealing and drawing Strength, Stack the Deck, Web Shooter, and revealing Jinx. He plays Pickpocket to gain the attack off of Jinx. He plays Stack the Deck, drawing Jinx and a Trooper, placing the Trooper back on top. He plays his other 2 Spider-Man cards, rescuing a bystander, and drawing an agent and a Trooper. He plays Jinx, revealing and discarding 2 agents. He plays out and snatches up Stack the Deck, which this turn shows how important it is for his strategy. Replacing it with Flip Out, which has Wall Crawl, grants 1 recruit, and when activated by a Spider Friend card, will draw a card. He takes the first shot at Carnage, drawing Feed Me, which will feast, and Miles will gain a recruit equal to the cost of each card. Carnage feasts on a trooper, gaining no recruit. He passes. Harrison draws 2 agents, 2 troopers, draw their fire, Perfect Hunter, and then a Scheme Twist from the villain deck, which will be placed on the bridge. He plays Perfect Hunter, drawing Pickpocket. He plays Pickpocket, revealing his own Jinx. He plays all but draw their fire, since he won't be able to hit Carnage anyways. He recruits Flip Out, replacing it with Responsibility. He takes out the Lizard, and passes. Miles draws Strength, Web Shooter, Jinx, Pickpocket, 2 wounds, and then a Strife from the villain deck. If she feasts on a 0-cost hero, each other player will gain a wound. If she escapes, each player will gain a wound. He plays Jinx, revealing an agent and a casual bank robbery, discarding the agent. He plays Web Shooter, rescuing a news reporter, which lets Miles draw a card when it's rescued, which is Stack the Deck. He plays Strength, drawing Responsibility. He plays Stack the Deck, drawing another Responsibility, and Stack the Deck, placing Responsibility on top. He plays Stack the Deck, drawing Responsibility and a Trooper, placing the Trooper on top. He plays both Responsibilities, drawing Strength and a Trooper. He plays Strength, drawing an agent. He plays Pickpocket, revealing a casual bank robbery. He takes out Strife and looks like he forgot to activate the Feast ability when fought. He recruits Great Responsibility, replacing it with casual bank robbery. He passes. Harrison draws 3 agents, draw their fire, Jinx, Flip Out, and then a bystander from the villain deck, which Carnage captures. He plays Jinx, revealing Great Responsibility and casual bank robbery, keeping both. He plays Flip Out activated, drawing casual bank robbery. He plays out, minus draw their fire, and recruits Card Shark, just looking to increase his damage output, and it's replaced with Web Shooter. He passes. Miles draws an agent, 2 Stack the Decks, 2 Astonishing Strengths, Pickpocket, and then a Strife from the villain deck. He plays Stack the Deck, drawing Responsibility and an agent, placing the agent on top. He plays Responsibility, drawing an agent. He plays Stack the Deck, drawing Responsibility and Web Shooter, placing an agent on top. He plays the rest of his Spider-Man cards, rescuing a bystander, drawing an agent, and revealing a Jinx for the rest. He recruits Web Shooter, replacing it with Silent Statue. While I can use Pickpocket to reveal Jinx, it won't lead to anything. He passes. Harrison draws an agent, Pickpocket, 2 draw their fires, Perfect Hunter, Card Shark, and then a Dr. Octopus from the villain deck. When he is defeated, we will draw 8 cards at the start of the next turn. He plays Card Shark, revealing a Trooper. He draws it when he plays Perfect Hunter. He plays Pickpocket, revealing an agent. He plays out, gaining 2 wounds from draw their fire. He attacks Carnage for the second time, drawing Om Nom Nom, which will feast, and if it is a 0-cost hero, other players will KO a bystander from their victory pile. Carnage feasts on an agent, and Miles KOs a bystander. He passes. Miles draws 1 agent, 1 trooper, Responsibility, Jinx, 2 wounds, and then a doppelganger from the villain deck. He plays Jinx, revealing an agent and a trooper, discarding both. He plays out, and Great Responsibility leads to a string of other Spider-Man cards and Stack the Decks. Last card drawn is Pickpocketing, which reveals Draw Their Fire from Harrison's deck. He fights Carnage for the 3rd time, drawing Drooling Jaws. Each player will reveal the top card of our deck, and Carnage will feast on one of them. We reveal Draw Their Fire and Web Shooter, feasting on Web Shooter. He passes. Harrison draws 1 agent, 2 troopers, Casual Bank Robbery, Jinx, Flip Out, and then a Scheme Twist from the villain deck, which will be placed in the streets. He plays Casual Bank Robbery into an activated Flip Out, drawing Draw Their Fire. He plays Jinx, revealing a Jinx and a Trooper, discarding the Trooper. He plays out and takes out Dr. Octopus, meaning he will draw 8 cards at the start of his next turn, shooting for the final blow. He decides against Casual Bank Robbery, looking for more damage. He passes. Miles draws an agent, a Trooper, Responsibility, Web Shooter, Stack the Deck, Pickpocket, and then a Carry-On from the villain deck, which will feast when defeated, and if that hero costs 1 or more, we return Carry-On to the city space he was in. He plays Pickpocket, revealing Jinx. He plays Stack the Deck, drawing Jinx and Stack the Deck, placing an agent on top. He plays out and does some Spider-Man shenanigans until he can take out Carnage, winning the game. The battle against Carnage was long and well fought. In the end, you finally defeat the Dark Dimension-infused Carnage. It took the combined forces of your entire team, but in the end, you were able to stop his rampage. Hopefully Mr. Sinister doesn't have enough of the samples to make another being like this again. After the battle, you approach the dismembered remains of Mysterio. Just as you approach them, they disperse into a purple mist, and you can hear a subtle laughter in the distance. "This has been quite the day," says Peter, "and I couldn't have done it without you, A.J. Harrison." Do you do hugs and shield? Spider-Man shrugs and goes in for a hug anyway. After heading back to headquarters for a full debrief, Fury presents you with a surprising statistic. In one day, you've done more shield work than an entire fleet of agents are expected to do in an entire week. So that's why your body hurts so much. You don't mind helping Spider-Man through a day, but you really appreciate how much he goes through on a regular basis. You're glad to be reassigned away from keeping an eye on him. Fury tells you to take the next week off. You aren't sure where you're going to go, but apparently hanging around New York doesn't keep the enemies at bay. You decide to head west, maybe in a remote spot in the mountains, might do you some good. Get away from it all. You'd actually forgotten that you always wanted to learn how to ski. After a week of skiing, mountain views, and relaxation, you get a call from SHIELD HQ. We have an urgent mission and need you to report in right away. We're sending a Quinjet to your location to pick you up. You'll never guess who's back. Thank you so much for joining me for my conclusion of Chapter 4 in Bageltop's Marvel Legendary campaign. I highly encourage you to play through this campaign yourself, as it is full of great team building decisions and thematic gameplay. As of this recording, this is the last chapter posted, and I'm eagerly awaiting Chapter 5, which will bring in the Guardians of the Galaxy expansion. Stay tuned for the continuation of the series when that chapter comes out. Until then, I'll be starting up 2 new Marvel Legendary series. The first is the Progression series, where we will be playing through each expansion of Marvel Legendary in publication order to replicate the experience of playing this game as it was coming out. Hope you join me for that exciting series. The second will be playing through a long list of scenarios found on Board Game Geeks that will thematically bring us through the history of Marvel Comics. I'm excited for both of these series, and I hope you will be too. I'll see you next time, and I hope you have a wonderful day.